the sclera. So sclera is outermost coat of the eyeball. Whole sclera is covered by Tenon's capsule. This is a repetition of the anatomy which already has been dealt with. All of you know about this. Anterior part is covered by the bulbar conjunctiva. Inner surface of the sclera is in contact with choroid. It is 1 millimeter thick posteriorly, and at the insertion of the recti, it is thinnest. It is 0.3 mm thick. So there are natural apertures in the sclera. Posterior apertures around the optic nerve transmits long and short ciliary nerves and vessels. Middle apertures are posterior to the equator of the globe for 4 vortex veins. If you remember the anatomy of the eyeball, 4 vortex vein will be there at 7 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and 10 o'clock. So presence of the vortex vein tells you it is a landmark to know whether they are at the equator of the globe. The eyeball is like a globe. So the vortex ampulla, if you see through indirect ophthalmoscopy, so you are at the equator of the globe. So you can correlate the lesions in the eye to the equator. Anterior apertures are 3 millimeters from the limbus to allow anterior ciliary vessels. Histologically, episcleral tissue is thin, dense vascularized layer of the connective tissue which contains fibroblasts, macrophages, and lymphocytes. Sclera contains dense fibers of collagen. Now we'll see the first disease of the episclera, that is episcleritis. It is inflammation of the Tenon's capsule overlying the sclera. It affects young adults. Female preponderance is there. Females are more affected in episcleritis. Exact etiology is not known. It is seen in the patients who are having connective tissue disorders like rheumatoid arthritis, SLE, and polyarteritis nodosa. It is also seen in patients who are having microbioallergy. So if the patient is suffering from chronic inflammation in the body by streptococcus or staphylococcus, like tonsillitis or adenoiditis, so the antigens of the streptococcus and staphylococcus protein, the antibodies will be formed, and ocular antigen will misunderstand these antibodies as, and it reacts to the antigens of the staphylococcus and streptococcus, causing episcleritis. The same thing can occur if the patient is having tuberculosis. It is known as microbial allergy. So the antibodies are formed against the bacteria, but these antibodies will identify the antigens on the ocular surface, sclera or episclera, and autoimmune reaction will occur, and it is one of the causes etiology of the scleritis, microbial allergy. So it is also seen in the cases of gout, psoriasis, and rosacea. So pathologically, episcleritis is accumulation of the lymphocytes in the Tenon's capsule with edema and congestion. So patient will present with redness. Localized redness will be there. Burning sensation will be there. Foreign body sensation will be there. Very rarely lacrimation and photophobia will occur in episcleritis. It is of two types. Diffuse episcleritis, when it involves 2 quadrants and more may be known. Nodular episcleritis, localized nodule with mild congestion will be seen. And typically, the nodule will be tender and it moves with the movement of the conjunctiva. If you try to move the bulbar conjunctiva, the nodule will move along with the conjunctiva. So the typical differentiating point between the scleritis and episcleritis. Episcleritic nodule or episcleritis will move with the movement of conjunctiva, whereas scleritis will not move with the movement of the conjunctiva. So this is how the diffuse episcleritis looks like. You can see only the nasal part of the bulbar conjunctiva is congested, whereas other part of the globe is normal, white. So congestion will be localized in episcleritis. In nodular episcleritis, you will see the nodule. Here in this picture, you can see the nodule on the temporal side elevation. So if you leave it like that, it remains active for 2 to 3 weeks and resolves spontaneously. Recurrences are common. So differential diagnosis of any nodule. Last class I told you, nodule at the limbus, limbal dermoid, flecten, scleritis, penicula, pterygium, nevus, OSSN, trabeculectomy bleb, and conjunctival bleb or wound leak. These are the differential diagnoses of the nodule at the limbus. So you have to rule out one by one. Limbal dermoid, it will contain the hair follicles and fat in it. And if you look for it is a part of the golden heart syndrome. So you have to look for the fused vertebrae and preauricular tags. Before the ear, they will have the skin tags. Pterygium, last class in detail, we have talked about how pterygium looks like. Penicula is a precursor of the pterygium, which will be present as a yellowish elevation on the bulbar conjunctiva. Scleritis, which I will be talking later in this class. OSSN, just now I talked how OSSN looks like. So treatment of episcleritis is topical steroid drops 4 to 6 times daily. Pulse steroid therapy has to be given. And whenever you prescribe steroid drops, you should tell the patient that these drops should not be used over the counter. And the patient will have tendency, because episcleritis and scleritis has got a tendency to recur. So without the consulting, they will buy the drops from the chemist and start putting the drops. If they put the steroid drops, 30% of the population are steroid responders, and they develop open angle glaucoma. And open angle glaucoma is a silent stealer of the vision. Optic atrophy will occur silently without anything. Until 90% of the vision is lost, patient will not be able to know what is happening. So you should caution the patient whenever you prescribe topical steroid drops for any condition. It has to be used only for 1 week. Then shift the patient to safer drops like NSA drops, mefenamic acid, brufen, flurpiprofen, or nipofenac. Any of the NSA drops systemically you can give, or you can prescribe NSA topical eye drops. Now coming to the scleritis, it is inflammation of the sclera. It occurs in elderly people, again with a female preponderance. Again, its exact etiology is not known. It is commonly seen in autoimmune collagen disorders or connective tissue disorders like rheumatoid arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, SLE, Wegener's granulomatosis, polyarthritis nodosa. All these are connective tissue disorders. It is also seen in metabolic disorders like gout and thyrotoxicosis. And as I told you, microbiology, if the patient is having any septic focus in the body or suffering from the tuberculosis, the allergen antibodies which are formed against the streptococcus or mycobacterium tuberculosis will attack the ocular surface and will occur. It is also, scleritis is also seen in herpetic conditions like herpes zoster ophthalmicus. And it is also seen in granulomatous diseases like tuberculosis, leprosy, syphilis, and sarcoidosis. Miscellaneous radiation, post-radiation also you can see scleritis. Vogt Conady Harris disease, you will see scleritis, Beckett's disease, and rosacea. Sometimes, post-surgically, any type of surgery on the eye, patient will develop scleritis. And without any cause also they can develop. It is known as idiopathic. Pathology, chronic granulomatous changes showing fibrinous necrosis, destruction of the collagen with inflammation of lymphocytes, plasma cells, and macrophages. Granuloma is surrounded by multinucleated epithelial giant cells and vasculitis is seen in the nodule. Classification of scleritis, anterior scleritis and posterior scleritis. And in anterior scleritis, you will have non-necrotizing, diffuse and nodular. Necrotizing scleritis with inflammation and without inflammation. So there are in total 5 varieties of scleritis. One is anterior, non-necrotizing, diffuse and nodular. 2 varieties, necrotizing scleritis with inflammation and without inflammation. And posterior scleritis. What are the symptoms of scleritis? Pain. Patient will present with severe pain, boring in character. The pain will be so severe in posterior scleritis, the patient will get up from the sleep in the midnight. And redness in scleritis is again diffuse and localized. And photophobia will also be there. Whereas in episcleritis, it is inflammation of the Tenon's capsule. So the photophobia is very rare in episcleritis. Whereas in scleritis, always it will be associated with photophobia because sclera, if you remember, anteriorly, it continues as stroma of the cornea. So whenever there is inflammation of the sclera is there, associated keratitis and anterior uveitis will be there. So whenever the ciliary body and iris are involved and cornea is involved, patient will have intense photophobia. And photophobia will lead to lacrimation. And very rarely there will be diminution of the vision. So signs in diffuse scleritis involve one quadrant of the sclera. Area will be salmon to purple in color. The typical color, whereas in scleritis, the color will be bright red. As the sclera is deep-seated, the congestion in the sclera will be seen as purple or salmon color. In nodular scleritis, characterized by 1 or 2 hard purple nodules situated near the limbus. Anterior necrotizing scleritis, severe form associated with inflammation and areas of necrosis due to infarction caused by vasculitis. As I told you, the main pathology is vasculitis. So the blood supply to the sclera will be hampered and necrosis of the sclera will occur. Avascular patches will occur on the sclera. And as I told you, the sclera is continuous with as a stroma in the cornea and endothelium of the cornea and epithelium of the iris and ciliary body. So whenever there is inflammation of the sclera is there or scleritis is there, patient will always have keratitis and uveitis. As sclera is structurally continuous with stroma of the cornea, scleritis is always associated with stromal keratitis and anterior uveitis. And if you carefully examine, whenever you see a scleritis case, if you carefully examine the cornea, corresponding to that sclerotic nodule, you will see a tongue-shaped opacity in the stroma of the cornea, which tells that the always scleritis is associated with keratitis. Whereas episcleritis, cornea will not be involved. So this is nodular scleritis. So as I told you, scleritis and scleritis will have recurrences. So whenever it heals, there will be some thinning of the sclera will be there. In the picture B, you can see, you are seeing nearer to the limbus, dark blackish part. That is because of thinning of the sclera, what you are seeing is ciliary body. When the sclera thins out, the ciliary body will start prolapsing from the thinned out sclera, then it is known as ciliary staphyloma. So every attack of scleritis will make the sclera thin and the ciliary body and uveal tissue will be seen through the thinned out sclera. Diffuse scleritis, the sclera will be diffusely involved, no nodule will be seen. But if you examine the cornea, you will see the tongue-shaped opacity in the cornea. In necrotizing scleritis with inflammation, here you can see it is a typical necrotizing scleritis with inflammation. Whenever there is scleritis, as I told you, you will see the tongue-shaped opacity in the cornea. Here you can see the sclerotic nodule on the temporal side, and if you carefully see the cornea, you are seeing the tongue-shaped opacity in the cornea. And further, if you see, you are seeing white dots or keratic precipitates on the posterior surface of the cornea. But the white dots which you are seeing on the cornea in this picture is keratic precipitate, which tells that the patient is also having anterior uveitis. So scleritis is always associated with keratitis and anterior uveitis. So in this picture, you can see all the three things. You are seeing the sclerotic nodule, which is inflamed, and stroma of the cornea, you can see the tongue shape opacity, and on the posterior surface of the cornea, you are seeing grayish white keratic precipitates. Numerous keratic precipitates are seen on the posterior surface of the cornea. So, avascular patches in necrotizing scleritis. Now you can see the white patches is avascular patches. Necrosis of the sclera will occur, and if this progresses, it will lead to exposure of the uveal tissue, that is ciliary body and choroid will get exposed. So anterior necrotizing scleritis without inflammation, thinning of the sclera with exposure of underlying uvea, it is known as scleromalacia perforans. Posterior scleritis, inflammation of the sclera beyond the equator. Again, as I told you, the eyeball looks like a globe, geography globe. So the line which divides the globe into two equal parts is known as equator. So posterior scleritis is the inflammation of the sclera beyond equator of the globe. So you have to suspect posterior scleritis because indirect signs will be there because nodule will not be visible to the eye because it is involving the posterior sclera. So you can, with torchlight or with slit lamp, you can examine only up to anterior sclera, up to the equator. Beyond equator, you cannot see with the slit lamp. So you have to rely on the indirect signs like exudative RD, macular edema, proptosis, which is painful, well, and ocular movements will be painful. Painful proptosis and painful ocular movements. These are the signs of posterior scleritis. Whenever patient is having exudative RD, macular edema, proptosis with pain and ocular movements which are painful. So this picture shows the scleromalacia perforans because repeated attacks of scleritis, the thinning of the sclera will occur and uveal tissue, ciliary body and the choroid gets exposed. And this condition is known as scleromalacia perforans. Again, this shows all types of scleritis, diffuse, nodular, and thinning of the sclera leading to exposure of the ciliary body or ciliary staphyloma. So in posterior scleritis, inflammation and thickening of the posterior sclera posterior to the globe occurs, may start primarily or as extension of the anterior scleritis. It will have, the patient will have excruciating pain, diminution of the vision will be there because posterior scleritis is always associated with exudative RD. So the diminution of the vision will be there and there will be mild proptosis, protrusion of the eyeball will be there. So when you examine the posterior segment of the eye, you will see optic disc edema, macular edema will be there, choroidal folds will be there, and there will be exudative RD and painful ophthalmoplegia. So ocular movements will be painful. Whenever you try to elicit the ocular movements, patient will have excruciating pain. So this we'll talk about later, serological investigation. This is how the exudative RD looks like. B scan typically shows the T sign. So you will see gap between the sclera and the tenons. This is the thickened sclera in the posterior scleritis. You can see the thickening of the sclera, and you will see a typical gap between the sclera and the tenons capsule because of the collection of the fluid. And this collection of the fluid with the optic nerve shadow forms the T sign of the V scan ultrasonography. A typical T sign of ultrasonography is seen in posterior scleritis. CT scan again shows thickening of the sclera. You can compare the thickness of the sclera on the right side, and so here the sclera is very thick, whereas on the other eye the sclera is thin. So typical sign of B scan and CT scan in scleritis is thickening of the sclera with exudation in between the sclera and the choroid. So whenever there is thinning of the sclera occurs because of repeated attack of scleritis, patient will develop ciliary staphylomas. This is the ciliary body which is trying to prolapse through the thinned out sclera. So what are the complications of scleritis? As I told you, scleritis is always associated with keratitis. Every attack of scleritis, you will see opacity in the stroma of the cornea. So the whole cornea will become white. The periphery of the cornea will become white. So it is known as sclerosing keratitis. The cornea will become like a sclera because of repeated attacks of scleritis. Because of the disease and the use of the steroids, there will be keratolysis. Thinning of the cornea will be there, melting of the cornea. Complicated cataracts forms because of repeated attack of scleritis. As I told you, whenever there is scleritis is there, it is associated with anterior uveitis. And anterior uveitis will lead to trabeculitis. And angle of the anterior chamber will also get inflamed, and trabecular meshwork, which is known to drain the aqueous humor from the eye, will get blocked because of the inflammation, leading to secondary glaucoma. Staphylomas will also form because of thinning of the sclera. Just now I had shown you how a ciliary staphyloma looks like. So in scleritis and episcleritis, you are supposed to do detailed investigations, starting from the basic investigations like total WBC count, differential count, ESR, and then rheumatoid factor, ANA, and LE cells you have to look for. And serological investigations like VDRL and HIV you have to rule out. Serum uric acid you have to see to rule out the gout. Montauk's test you have to do to rule out tuberculosis. And other newer tests like polymerase chain reaction, other things you have to do to rule out tuberculosis, leprosy, and nasal swab for the leprosy, and then ear clipping to rule out the leprosy, and sarcoid assays you have to do. And radiological tests, X-ray chest to rule out again tuberculosis, paranasal sinuses X-ray to rule out any chronic inflammation, infection in the sinuses, X-ray of sacroiliac joint to rule out spondylitis, ankylosing spondylitis. The treatment is topical steroid and systemic NSAIDs. Again, the topical steroid you have to use with caution in scleritis, because the disease itself will thin out the sclera, melt the sclera, and steroids also try to thin out the sclera. So very short dose of steroids you have to give and shift the patient to systemic NSAIDs like mefenamic acid or brufen, ibuprofen. If the patient's inflammation is not getting controlled with the steroids and NSAIDs, then you can put the patient on immunosuppressants like methotrexate, cyclophosphamide, azathioprine, and cyclosporine. Any of these drugs can be used in long term, and taking care of liver function tests and renal function tests and WBC count, because these immunosuppressants are known to cause bone marrow suppression, and they affects the function of the liver and kidneys. So whenever you put the patient on immunosuppressants drug like methotrexate, cyclophosphamide, azathioprine, and cyclosporine, should always take the help of the physician or rheumatologist. So time to time they will be looking for the liver function tests and rule out the bone marrow suppression by doing the repeated WBC count and peripheral picture. So this ends my talk on disease of the sclera and conjunctiva disease. Next class, another doctor will start. If you have any doubts, you can ask me.